I am Shen Huaizhi's first wife, yet after he ascended the throne, he only granted me the title of Consort Yi. Even a lowly palace maid mocked me, saying a merchant's daughter remains just that, merely a substitute for my elder sister. But 5 years later, the emperor who had barely secured his throne glared at me with reddened eyes and demanded, "We've been bound by marriage for years, why do you treat me as nothing more than a substitute for a kitchen soldier?" Ugh. Yushu clutched her knee, letting out a pained cry. I glanced around, pulled her up, and quietly led her to the corridor. As she massaged my knee, I stopped her, fished 2 bottles of medicinal wine from my sleeve, and handed her one. "After applying this, hurry back. We don't want the Empress to seize another opportunity to accuse us of being too." I remembered something and corrected myself, Empress Yuanjing. She was disrespectful. 3 days ago, my cousin Su Jing passed away. Shen Huaizhi, disregarding the opposition of court officials and the Empress Dowager, staged a farce of 2 empresses in life and death. He insisted on posthumously honoring her as Empress Yuanjing and burying her with imperial rights. He wouldn't remember that I, his original consort, remained merely Consort Yi, even my title was cobbled together from my given name. After applying the ointment, Yushu and I slipped back to the memorial hall. 1 foot barely crossed the threshold when we saw the chamber emptied of all the other consorts. Only Shen Huaizhi sat with a grim face beside Empress Zhuang in the seat of honor. "Where have you been?" "Your Majesty, this servant and Yushu went to change our garments." Changing garments was merely a euphemism for using the lavatory. I couldn't believe Shen Huaizhi would be so heartless as to forbid anyone from attending to their bodily needs. He clapped his hands, and guards escorted a blood-soaked palace maid forward. "Your personal attendant, Yuner, has confessed. It was you who laced Jinner's tea with poison month after month, poisoning her vital organs beyond salvation. She was a pitiful woman who lost her child, and she had done your family a favor. Why couldn't you spare her?" After Su Zhang's miscarriage, she suffered intermittent bleeding. The imperial physician declared her illness terminal, unlikely to survive the winter. After she died in Shen Huaizhi's arms, he turned the palace upside down until he finally uncovered the clues. That was the first time I truly understood the meaning of the Son of Heaven's wrath. These days, a faint scent of blood lingers throughout the palace. Eunuchs who lined their pockets were beaten to death with rods, gossiping palace maids were hanged. Not a single palace servant lived without trembling fear. Yuner struggled toward me, "Your Highness. I have failed you. Only death can atone for my sins." With that, she snatched the guard's dagger from his waist and slashed at the spirit altar. Blood spattered the white silk draped over the coffin, some droplets landing upon it. I fixed my gaze on Shen Huaizhi. "Your Majesty, do you truly intend to condemn this servant based solely on this palace maid's testimony? The wealth I used to bribe her, the source of the poison, will you not inquire into any of this?" The Empress, ever virtuous, interceded, "Indeed, Your Majesty. Perhaps confine Consort Yi first, then determine her punishment after a thorough investigation." Shen Huaizhi turned away, personally removing the blood-stained white silk before ordering my confinement within the Chonghua Palace. All attendants except Yushu were taken away, some interrogated, others reassigned. This place felt like a cold palace. Yushu tore open each stale bun delivered by the eunuch, finding no hidden notes or secret messages inside. I took one still edible and offered half to Yushu. "His Majesty hates me to the bone and won't easily forgive. You needn't suffer with me. Spend your silver and find service in another palace sooner." Yushu sniffled and refused to comply. "But Your Majesty and you are a couple who weathered hardships together." "He wouldn't." "He would," I murmured to myself. "True through hardship, but false as husband and wife." The wife in his heart was neither me nor the Empress, but my late cousin, Su Jing. I came from a merchant family. My father built ships, he had a remarkable talent for it. His vessels could sail thousands of miles, and soon he became one of the wealthiest merchants in the region. Later, he expanded into the seafood trade, building a vast and prosperous enterprise. Our family of 3 lived quietly in Ningzhou, never dreaming of entering officialdom. Until I was 7, when news came from the authorities, my father had colluded with pirates and smuggled salt. He was thrown into prison, tortured daily, his life hanging by a thread. My mother took me and a large sum of money to plead our case before Su Xing, the newly appointed Minister of Justice, begging him to investigate fairly. By tradition, I should have addressed him as uncle. But since we were beyond the 5 degrees of kinship, we weren't particularly close, we were merely distant relatives. He refused to see us and rejected our money, instead giving us an extra 20 taels of silver. Only later did I learn that silver was meant for my father's funeral expenses. Within days, the case was resolved. The official document delivered by the authorities stated that pirates had abducted my grandparents, forcing my father to facilitate their smuggling operations. Overcome with shame, my father left behind a blood-stained letter and took his own life in prison. Our dynasty governs through filial piety. Upon learning the truth, His Majesty was deeply moved. With his golden words, he decreed that my mother and I would not be implicated. Su Xing slipped out to meet us. She confided that her father had done all he could. This affair was orchestrated by the Marquis of Shunping to eliminate Jin Lu, the eunuch who had long opposed the maritime ban, a decision beyond the Ministry of Justice's authority to alter. Minister Su had similarly explained the stakes to my father. After hearing this, he bit his finger to write a confession implicating Jin Lu, then took his own life. Minister Su then pleaded for a favor from the Marquis of Shunping, and ultimately, the emperor spared us. Sister, auntie, that our family was not implicated is already a heavenly grace. Su Xing said, settle down in the capital. With my father looking after you, it won't be too hard. I wailed uncontrollably. Jin Lu, the Marquis of Shunping, I didn't understand. I truly didn't understand. Why must the clash between these 2 tigers cost the life of my father, an innocent man? Mother covered my mouth tightly, silently weeping. The maritime trade was lost forever. Mother and I, a widow and her orphaned daughter, returned to our hometown, inevitably facing gossip and whispers. With the remaining funds, Mother rented a small shop in a quiet corner of the capital and opened a girls' academy. Being a newcomer, her scholarship naturally couldn't compare to the erudite female scholars of the capital, so things weren't smooth sailing at first. But she and my father seemed born with a natural talent for business. The Shen paper she made was perfect for both writing and painting, with just the right balance of softness and firmness. Most importantly, it remained undamaged even after being folded countless times. Gradually, it gained a modest reputation, attracting many high-ranking officials and nobles who came to purchase it. Among them was one who seemed to share a kindred spirit with her. I didn't mind, as long as he was someone trustworthy. My mother and I believed our days would surely grow better with each passing day. When I was 12, I met Chu Hua. He arrived riding a donkey, his clothes worn and threadbare, shoes ill-fitting, blood seeping through the back. It was near dusk, the girls' school had already dismissed, and the shop was about to close. I couldn't immediately guess why he'd come here. I came to buy Shen paper, he stammered. I picked up a stack and asked, how many do you need? He bowed his head lower. 1. Would that be all right? I can't afford more. I chuckled, pulled out a single sheet, and handed it to him. Here, it's on the house. Just don't go around saying our Shen paper is too expensive, you'll scare people away. He hesitated, but my arm was getting tired from holding it out. Finally, he extended his frostbitten hand, accepted the paper with profuse thanks, and immediately withdrew it. Confused, I looked at my palm, thinking I might have dirt on it. Chu Hua hurriedly explained, I just finished farm work and didn't want to dirty your fine silk dress. I smiled, not taking it to heart. Just when I was about to forget him, Chu Hua came to buy Shen paper again. The difference was, this time he was dressed much more neatly and bought a thick stack of Shen paper. As prices rose, the cost of our Shen paper had already become quite high. Curious, I asked, have you struck it rich? Chu Hua scratched his head sheepishly and pulled out a wooden box containing a plate of exquisite pastries. These are peach blossom pastries my mother made herself. She said since I received something from you last time, even a drop of kindness deserves a spring of gratitude. Now that our harvest is better, we've bought new clothes so I won't offend anyone again. I accepted them cheerfully and took a bite. Your mother is truly thoughtful. I don't usually care for sweets, but these peach blossom pastries weren't cloyingly sweet. They were flaky and soft, quite delicious. I glanced at the sky. It looked like rain was coming, so I worried, where do you live? It's about to rain. You should head home early. Chu Hua gave an awkward smile and mumbled, Anxi Town, on the outskirts of the capital. Anxi Town on the outskirts of the capital, I'd heard Su Jing mention it. It wasn't a wealthy place, quite remote, where most farmers could only till the land generation after generation with no hope of betterment. Yet Chu Hua had bought quite a lot of Xian paper. Watching his receding figure, I grabbed an umbrella and ran after him without a second thought, shoving it into his hands before turning and leaving immediately. I hoped he would one day make a name for himself. During the farming season, Chu Hua came to buy Xian paper more and more often. True to his word, he never again failed to uphold his dignity. Our conversations grew more frequent. On rare moments of leisure, we'd catch fireflies, pick peach blossoms for pastries, or browse bookshops together. I knew my talents couldn't match those of noble ladies like Su Jing, but being with him brought its own unique joys. Gradually, however, business at the Xian paper shop declined. Times had changed. Rebellion broke out in the southern frontier, and His Majesty dispatched troops to suppress it. Whether sons of officials or commoners, all were eager to lay down their pens and take up arms. I never imagined Chu Hua would be no exception. The day he bid me farewell, I wept as I pleaded, your father died in battle, yet you and your mother received no imperial compensation. Why repeat that fate? His resolve was unshaken. A true man's heart lies in the world. When I earn my military honors, I will marry you with 3 letters and 6 rights, and I will care for your mother well. I had no reason to hold him back. I only took off the auspicious cloud jade pendant my father had given me, hoping it would protect him. War is always unpredictable. The southern border unrest took 2 years to quell. In the earlier months, he would still pour out his endless longing for me in his letters, recounting his own valor. But as the fighting dragged on, even the letters ceased. Chu Hua's mother never saw her son return. Her chronic cough had ravaged her lungs, and no medicine could help her. On her deathbed, that kind woman urged me, you must forget Chu Hua. You must remarry. I hid the official death notice and concealed my grief, arranging her funeral properly. Then I collapsed into my mother's arms and wept uncontrollably. When would mother and son find peace in the afterlife? While shopping for offerings on the street, I overheard officials bellowing, where are Chu Hua's relatives? You neighbors, spread the word. Let them come claim the compensation. I saw my jade pendant, fastened to another man's waist. That man bore a striking resemblance to Chu Hua in his brow. I rushed forward recklessly, only to be stopped by guards. Who are you, blind woman? This is the 9th prince. I clumsily knelt to pay my respects, yet my eyes remained fixed on that jade pendant. The auspicious cloud pattern, I could never mistake it. Back then, Shen Huaizhi was still an unfulfilled prince. Even with his military achievements this time, he hadn't been granted even a marquis title. All the glory had gone to his eldest legitimate brother, Shen Huaiming. The entire court and country were immersed in the joy of establishing the crown prince. Yet, he who does not wish it done to himself must not do it to others. His purpose in coming was to personally oversee the layers of officials below him, ensuring every penny of the relief funds reached the families. Seeing my distress, he mistook me for someone seeking money and generously removed the jade pendant to give it to me. I could not bear such a misunderstanding and explained, this maiden is a close friend of Chu Hua. This jade pendant was given to him by me before his departure. Shen Huaizhi listened, his expression thoughtful. How fortuitous. I had assumed I found it by chance while clearing the battlefield, never expecting it would find its rightful owner. Alas, he was destined only for the life of a firehead soldier. Several constables pressed silver into my hand, then had me write my name in the registry. Shen Huaizhi examined the paper, asking, Su of Ningzhou? Is the current Minister of Justice, Su Jing, your clan relative? I nodded. Then you must know Su Jing's daughter, Su Jing? A flicker of delight crossed his eyes. But I had no interest in playing matchmaker for others' romantic affairs, so I evaded the question. Perhaps at Minister Su's request, or for some other reason, Su Jing had grown distant from me in recent years. Even with my head buried in my own affairs, I'd heard the rumors. Su Jing and the current crown prince had once competed in a tea ceremony at a banquet, and in the end, the crown prince had graciously conceded defeat. This tale of a talented scholar and a beautiful lady naturally spread like wildfire. Given her background, becoming crown princess would be most fitting. Besides, her extraordinary talent had long been renowned throughout the capital. After the Xian paper shop's business began to recover, I heard news of Su Jing's betrothal to Crown Prince Shen Huaizhi. But then mother suddenly fell ill. I sought renowned physicians and used the finest medicines, yet still could not save her. She finally confided the truth to me. The lowly official she had shared a deep connection with had committed a crime and fled far away, deceiving her and taking her secret Xian paper formula with him. Remember this, love is the most unreliable thing. Only silver is real. As a female tutor, she had taught countless poems and songs to others, yet ironically, these words became her final lesson to me. I had just reached the age of coming of age, yet I was left without parents. The Su family, the Minister of Revenue's household, visited me once, giving me some silver and instructing me to return to my hometown in Ningzhou. Having a relative like me in the capital was unsightly. Moreover, the crown prince's maternal uncle was none other than the Marquis of Shunping, the very man implicated in my father's death. I dismissed the servants and prepared to depart, only to be targeted by burglars who broke in during the night. At the critical moment, Shen Huaizhi arrived and shot every last one of them dead. With his back to me, he tossed aside his own outer robe and picked up the shattered auspicious cloud jade pendant from the ground. How will a frail young woman like you travel from the capital to Ningzhou? Why not stay here for now? Once I've repaired this pendant, we can discuss further. I wrapped the cloak tightly around myself, shaking my head. Your Highness shouldn't associate with someone of my station. No sooner had I spoken than he handed me a document. It clearly stated that my father, Su Che, had no dealings with pirates, yet had been framed by treacherous men and tortured into false confessions. He had cleared my father's name. Shock and joy overwhelmed me, leaving me speechless. This time, the Marquis of Shunping pushed a disciple to take the blame, but I believe justice will prevail. The net of heaven is wide, yet nothing escapes it. He extended his hand to me. The ground is cold. I looked at him, yet it felt as though I was seeing someone else through him. Finally, I took his hand. Shen Huaizhi, this idle prince, seemed genuinely without purpose. He said his elder brothers deliberately suppressed him, and the emperor consequently gave him no assignments. We two, forgotten in a corner of the capital, suddenly found much to talk about. Once, heavy rains in Luzhou halted the shipment of materials I'd ordered to the capital. I was at a loss, terrified that my mother's life's work would be ruined by my hands. Shen Huaizhi, however, mobilized his last remaining connections. He sent the same variety of material produced in Fanyang, enabling me to make Xian paper. This place is lovely, the scent of flowers, the song of birds. I'm just glad your Highness doesn't mind the simplicity. My smile froze on my face as I stared at the wound on his hand. I cut myself while stripping bark. I'm just too frail. I wanted to learn Xian papermaking, but it seems I've made a mess of things. I'm no match for you and your team. The respect in his eyes, I never forgot it. I thought he admired me. On the anniversary of Chu Hua's death, Shen Huaizhi hesitated before speaking. Truthfully, you should try to let him go. I thought, yes, it was time. Shen Huaizhi truly had a way. He secured the emperor's decree for our marriage, and my father was even posthumously granted an honorary title. He confided that neither he nor his mother, Consort Yi, enjoyed imperial favor. This time, he had traded his own wounds for a sliver of the emperor's pity, securing his union with me. Crucially, marrying me, once the lowly daughter of a merchant, meant Shen Huaizhi posed no threat to anyone. By custom, I must observe 3 years of mourning for my mother. During these 3 years, it was said that unmarried couples should avoid suspicion, but Shen Huaizhi refused to heed this. I worry about you living here alone, so I've sent some maids skilled in martial arts to attend to you. This way, your reputation remains unblemished, and you'll have help managing the Shan paper shop. Yu Zhu was one of them. I smiled faintly. Your Highness truly doesn't mind me doing business? Who would be hostile to silver? He blurted out. Among those scrambling for power in the bureaucracy, who doesn't have a few business-savvy former subordinates? My father, the emperor, knows your situation well. He himself favors Su family Shan paper. How could others dare to object? Throughout those 3 years, Shen Huaizhi never missed the Qingming and Hanqi festivals to honor my parents. He even initiated conversations with me about Chu Hua. As I prepared to marry into the imperial family, my former temperament had completely transformed. I spoke calmly of his and his mother's hardships, of the years without compensation payments, of the contented, simple lives of Anxi townspeople, as if recounting a tale from a distant past. Shen Huaizhi listened quietly throughout. When I finished, he suddenly roared, if I were the son of heaven, I would never let the soldiers who secured our nation's peace and stability feel disheartened. I didn't respond, choosing to believe he was merely describing a beautiful dream. The crown prince had been established, his position secure, how could he possibly be shaken? But reality proved me wrong. When His Majesty visited the national temple to worship the Buddha, an assassin disguised as a monk struck with a poisoned dagger. As the emperor lay dying and the imperial physicians were at a loss, Consort Yi, who had once been a female physician, presented the antidote. After His Majesty recovered, he showered her with favor, directly promoting her from consort to noble consort. Shen Huaizhi was consequently enfeoffed as Prince of Ning. Naturally, His Majesty had reservations about my marriage to him. He repeatedly urged me to reconsider, offering to rescind the decree and select a noble lady of distinguished lineage for him instead. As for me, he suggested I remain merely a secondary consort. Faced with this harsh reality, I had no choice but to yield. I feared that if I stubbornly insisted on marrying him, I would only suffer greater torment. Thus, I sought out Shen Huaizhi to discuss the matter. Yet he resolutely rejected all objections, insisting that the position of principal consort would remain mine. Our marriage coincided with a tumultuous period for the Shunping Marquis and the Empress, who were siblings. The Shunping Marquis embezzled funds and forcibly abducted commoners' daughters. The crown prince's consort, Su Jing, suffered a miscarriage during her pregnancy and subsequently struggled to conceive again, leaving the emperor deeply disappointed. Consequently, the empress and crown prince bore us little favor. Yet Su Jing, smiling radiantly, helped us to our feet and bestowed generous gifts, once sisters, now sisters-in-law. After years apart, her beauty remained undimmed. During the wedding night, Shen Huaizhi said to me, though we were merely sisters by blood, today you and the crown princess both wear court robes, making you look even more alike. I raised the wine vessel and drank the ceremonial wine with him. Didn't your highness say we should forget the past? Shen Huaizhi seemed momentarily lost, then smiled, yes, forget the unhappy things of the past. I thought Chu Hua and Su Jing were both relics of the past. Little did I know, I was his past, while Su Jing was his new chapter. The crown prince, resentful after being reprimanded by His Majesty, slandered Shen Huaizhi during our 3rd month of marriage, resulting in his demotion to Ningzhou. Fearing for the consort Shu in the palace, I left her all my savings from years of accumulation. Shen Huaizhi and I faced countless dangers along our journey. Within the lush forest, countless imperial guards lay in wait to take our lives, even releasing venomous snakes. It was I who shielded him from that strike. My mind went blank then, all I could think was that I couldn't lose this family member again. I still remember Shen Huaizhi holding me, lost in that dense jungle with no exit in sight. He simply sucked the poisoned blood from my wound himself. Thankfully, we both survived. We finally found a physician, questioned him at length, and only after confirming we were truly unharmed did we let him leave. Shen Huaizhi carefully produced the auspicious clad jade pendant he'd always kept close to his heart. I promised you I wouldn't let it shatter a second time. During our 3 years in Ningzhou, we truly depended on each other for survival. All traces of pride vanished, we lived like commoners, washing our own clothes and tilling the land. I returned to my old trade of selling Xian paper. Fortunately, business was good. Otherwise, living solely on Shen Huaizhi's salary, heavily taxed at every turn, would have been impossible. 3 years later, the emperor fell gravely ill, and an event shook the court and the realm. He enumerated the crimes of the Li family. The Marquis of Shunping deposed Empress Li as a commoner, stripped the crown prince of his title and exiled him as Prince of Qi, and installed Shen Huaizhi as the new crown prince. I still recall how Shen Huaiming, to spare his wife, repeatedly sought a divorce from Su Jing. Minister Su shared this wish, but Su Jing steadfastly refused, insisting on accompanying him to that place of suffering. Yet, on the eve of their departure, Shen Huaiming died suddenly at home. Months later, His Majesty passed away, and Shen Huaizhi ascended the throne. It was the Dowager Empress, Consort Yi, who summoned me. She bestowed all her treasured jewels upon me, smiling warmly as she shared the intricacies of court life. Yet Shen Huaizhi declared, "Mother Yi comes from a merchant family. She is unfit to be empress." Empress Dowager Zhuang froze, and so did I. Seeming remorseful, he told me, "Yi, you've sacrificed much for me. I'll ensure you never want for anything." But I endured unimaginable hardship to ascend the throne. I want the very best. Indeed, Su Jing was the renowned scholar beauty of the capital, the best. I was merely a stopgap measure. Fortunately, this wasn't my first major upheaval, so I forced myself not to cry. In the end, Empress Dowager Zhuang could only resign herself to saying, "Even if our great Yi dynasty has the old custom of a younger uncle marrying his widowed sister-in-law, Su Jing absolutely cannot be empress." Neither candidate for empress could satisfy this mother and son, so neither would be appointed. Thus, the position of empress fell to the Empress Dowager's niece, Zhuang Yan. Su Jing, meanwhile, was elevated to imperial consort, second only to the emperor. As for me, I remained merely a consort. He was so preoccupied he didn't even have time to draft a title for me. It was the Empress Dowager who suggested, "Consort Su doesn't roll off the tongue. Consort Yi is quite suitable." In the palace, we were the only 3 consorts of any standing, yet Shen Huaizhi devoted himself entirely to Su Jing, paying us no mind whatsoever. Whether it was payback or not, Su Jing ignored him in return. Day after day, she met him with cold stares and dismissive indifference. But both the Empress and I kept our lips tightly sealed. We understood our very existence depended on Su Jing. If we couldn't tolerate her, what purpose would we serve? Finally, through Shen Huaizhi's diligent efforts, Su Jing conceived. Shen Huaizhi even ordered the Empress and me to withdraw, claiming Su Jing's frail constitution couldn't tolerate outsiders disturbing her pregnancy. Yet, it proved futile. Less than 2 months after her miscarriage, Su Jing herself passed away. Shen Huaizhi was devastated, convinced something sinister was afoot, that someone had secretly harmed her. The Empress, being the Empress Dowager's niece, held immense power and influence. I, however, was not so fortunate. The Empress Dowager sighed repeatedly, yet could not sway Shen Huaizhi's decision. All she could do was leave me a bottle of turtle breath pills from the Eastern realm, saying they could induce a state of apparent death. The imperial edict that arrived the next day did not come to take my life, but it inflicted pain deeper than death itself. Accused of harming the imperial heir, I was stripped of my title and confined for life in Fahua Temple to perform rites for the dragon fetus. Only when I received the edict did I truly realize my life was about to end. Fahua Temple, a place of seclusion for imperial women who had erred, was a place where life was worse than death. It wasn't that I couldn't endure a life of hardship, but that I couldn't endure a life without freedom. On my first night at Fahua Temple, I tossed and turned, unable to sleep. I learned to make prayer flags, inscribing the names of my parents, Chu Hua, and Chu Hua's mother upon them. I missed them so terribly. Chu Hua, you are not Shen Huaizhi, nor is Shen Huaizhi you, I murmured to myself. I was wrong. Now, only in this secluded place did I dare speak the emperor's name aloud. The temple door creaked open. Someone was approaching. I turned to look, but saw only that figure in bright yellow fading into the distance. I rubbed my eyes, thinking to myself that Fahua Temple truly was no place for humans. Candles of such poor quality were deliberately meant to strain one's eyes. 3 months after arriving at Fahua Temple, Yu Shu and I took the turtle breath pills given to us by the Empress Dowager. I had originally entered the palace and the mansion out of love for Shen Huaizhi. Now it seemed I had been deluding myself. What I hadn't anticipated was that on the day of our famed death, Shen Huaizhi and the Empress Dowager came to Fahua Temple. The trembling abbot reported, "Your Majesty, Empress Dowager, Lady Miaozhen has passed away. The palace maid Yushu has also followed her mistress in death." He rushed recklessly to our resting place, grabbed my sleeve, and rubbed the frostbite on my hand. The nuns were already trembling in terror. It was an unwritten rule that royal women who came here were not to be treated kindly. Ming, it hadn't flared up in so long. How could it get like this after only 3 months? Why didn't you wait for me? Wait for me to explain? Did you truly believe I'd let you suffer here? His touch only made the frostbite itch unbearably worse. Yet the potion's potency was overwhelming. I felt as if my soul had left my body. Conscious, yet utterly unable to move. Shen Huaizhi wept softly. I was certain he remembered, when we first arrived in Ningzhou, life was hard. Though he wasn't as delicate as the other princes, asking him to wash clothes and cook was too much to ask. So I took on all those chores myself. I asked for nothing else, only that he could live in peace, safe from his brother's schemes. Moments later, I heard the Empress Dowager propose a lavish funeral for me, befitting a first-rank noble consort. But the abbot presented my own handwritten will. I had written clearly, "Both Yushu and I wish to be cremated, our ashes scattered into the sea to drift freely." Furthermore, when I left the palace, I was forbidden to take even a single coin. Now, I only ask that the auspicious cloud jade pendant be buried with me. Shen Huaizhi turned that page over and over, studying it for a long time. After a moment of silence, he removed the jade pendant from his waist and placed it in my palm. "Very well, Sui. I shall grant your wish." He walked out of the temple in a daze, instructing, "Should any further abuse occur within these walls, there will be no leniency." The Empress Dowager dismissed the others and gently clasped my hand. "I know. You have suffered." She swiftly arranged for 2 corpses to be substituted for ours. Leaving day behind, beneath the vast sky and boundless earth, we would find our own place to call home. 5 years later, Yushu and I arrived in the kingdom of Danchuan. Surrounded by sea on all sides, this land embraced gender equality. It was the perfect place for us to make our mark. Perhaps the lingering effects of the medicine were too strong. I found myself unable to recall the paper-making techniques I once knew so well. At first, I hit countless snags, but fortunately, I encountered many kind-hearted souls. Last year, Yushu married a man from Danchuan. Coincidentally, he was also in the maritime trade, a fellow merchant like my father. Together, they often journeyed across nations, living a life of pure contentment. One day, Yushu returned in a panic, having just set sail. The Empress Dowager of Yeqing is gravely ill." I was startled. Upon reflection, the Empress Dowager had always been frail. Are you certain? Yuzhu nodded vigorously. It's true. Emperor Yeqing has been fasting for a month straight. Empress Dowager Zhuang had been kind to us. Both in gratitude and duty, I felt compelled to pay my respects. It was also time to visit my parents in Chuhua. I traveled back to the Yeqing capital with Yuzhu's husband's merchant caravan. The former Fahua Temple and Anxi town had been completely transformed, now radiating prosperity. My former residence on the outskirts of the capital was also unrecognizable. After offering incense to my parents in Chuhua, I turned to leave when I saw that most familiar face. Shen Huaizhi had changed greatly, more accurately, he bore the deep marks of time. He had grown a beard, his fingers thickened with calluses, and even his hair had begun to turn gray. I knew you would come here first. I refused to feign politeness any longer and accused him. To lure me back, you dared to toy with the Empress Dowager's health. I once thought you were unworthy as a husband, but now I see you are unworthy even as a son. Shen Huaizhi scrambled to explain, Mother Empress's illness was cured by a wandering folk doctor. Had she not, in her final moments, revealed the truth to me, I would still be kept in the dark by you two, mother and daughter. He acknowledged me as the Empress Dowager's daughter-in-law, yet refused to recognize me as his wife. You've been gone 5 years. Much has transpired in the palace during that time. The imperial consort suffered a miscarriage, it was the Empress's doing. As for her death, she poisoned herself out of resentment that I forcibly took her as a consort. At this point, he could not hide his shame. I seized the moment to continue. Do not assume I am far from the court and unaware. I know everything. In these 5 years, you held 2 imperial selection ceremonies, yet gained only 1 prince. You know better than I who orchestrated this. That is why, half a year ago, you declared the Empress unworthy of her position and banished her to a separate palace. I understand your predicament. When you first ascended the throne, you needed military generals. The Empress Dowager's own brother, now the Divine Might General, was the ideal candidate. General Zhuang was a rare, loyal and capable commander. Upon learning of his daughter's wicked deeds, he refused to shield her. You were wise to promote the Empress Zhuang's sister to imperial consort, entrusting her with the Phoenix Seal. I also know you needed the sincere support of the literati faction led by Minister Su. Thus, the position of imperial consort for Su Jing was indispensable. I know you never intended to take my life, nor did you fully believe I harmed Su Jing and her child. But as your first wife, I offered no aid in consolidating your power. On the contrary, my presence unsettled the families behind the Empress and imperial consort. Therefore, you consider sending me to Fahua Temple a favor. Shen Huaizhi finally showed a flicker of delight. Though you are far away in Danchuan, you know the situation in Yeqing Palace. You care about me. I shot him a look. Your Majesty, do you know what Danchuan is famous for? Melon seeds and watermelons. But Your Majesty, it is true that you demoted your wife to a concubine. It is true that after ascending the throne, you sought to marry the finest maiden in the capital, my cousin Su Jing. It is also true that for her sake, you disregarded the opposition of your ministers and insisted on posthumously honoring her as empress. Can you honestly say to yourself that you feel no romantic love for her? Regarding the past, he undoubtedly betrayed my sincerity. I cannot say I forgive him now, only that it is settled. You and I are the true lifelong partners. My feelings for Su Jing were merely the lingering resentment of youthful disappointment, nothing more. I've long wanted to ask you, why do you treat me only as a substitute for that firehead soldier? In what way am I inferior to him? He could offer no further defense, resorting instead to invoking a man long dead. I shook my head. If I saw you as a substitute, I wouldn't care whether I was empress or concubine, only that you still breathed. Perhaps if Chuhua had returned victorious and we'd married as planned, things would still have been far from perfect. But it's also possible we could have grown old together. As for you, I must admit I was wrong. I thought showering someone with boundless favors would eventually cultivate love. What's done cannot be undone, but the future remains within reach. If you wish, I can immediately register you among the court's high ministers and welcome you into the palace as empress. Shen Huaizhi wrapped his arms around my shoulders regardless. I wasn't as strong as him and couldn't push him away, so I continued, what if I refuse to betray my ancestors and renounce my lineage to join another family? I demand you clear the name of Consort Yi, restore my innocence, then escort me through the Grand Harmony Gate in the ceremonial carriage of an empress, posthumously honoring 3 generations of my Su clan. After all, when I was deposed, the imperial edict was lengthy, detailing how I was jealous, persecuted my cousin, and harmed the imperial heir. Even a lowly palace maid spat at my palace gate. Yet when Empress Xuan was deposed, the decree stated only that her virtue was unworthy of her position. Though confined to the cold palace, she still retained the honors due an empress. Shen Huaizhi's reaction was as I expected, unsurprisingly hesitant. For an emperor, whose decrees shift with the wind, to publicly admit before his subjects that he wronged his first wife, where would his dignity lie? He would never permit me to be that exception. But I remember Su Jing was one of his many exceptions. As everyone knows, actions speak louder than words. The young uncle who married his widowed sister-in-law, leaving 2 queens, one dead, one alive. To this day, it remains a celebrated tale in every street and alley. He had once loved Su Jing with genuine, burning passion. It was not merely, as he claimed, a grudging acceptance or a momentary whim. I could no longer be his expedient solution. I believed that even if I were to remarry, I deserved someone who would treat me with wholehearted sincerity. I stepped back twice and respectfully kowtowed to him. Your Majesty, you are the ruler of the realm, the sovereign of Great Ye, the Empress Dowager's only son, the husband of the imperial consorts, the father of princesses and princes. Do not let me, a mere commoner, cause you to fall out with Danchuan. The ground was damp from the rain. I remembered how, on a similar afternoon after a downpour, he had written the characters Shen Huaizhi stroke by stroke at my parents' graves. He declared himself their son-in-law, vowing to fulfill his filial duties as a son-in-law. Yet vows only hold weight when spoken with sincerity. Shen Huaizhi helped me to my feet, took a handkerchief, and wiped the dust from my knees. His voice trembled with emotion as he asked, "What more can I do to make amends?" Your Majesty, please honor your promise that day. Do not dishearten the soldiers who expanded Yeqing's borders and secured its peace. Do not let the elderly, women, and children suffer the ravages of war. Let there be no more starving corpses. Let there be no more impoverished scholars denied their due. I had no further demands of him. We were even. After meeting Shen Huaizhi, Yu Shu and I lingered not long before hastening back to Danchuan. She continued sailing the seas with her husband's merchant fleet, while I devoted myself to developing new types of Xian paper, occasionally troubling her to promote it overseas. On several occasions, she tactfully probed my feelings, asking if I wished to remarry. I always evaded the question. My mother's dying words remain etched in my memory. Compared to romantic love, silver is far more reliable. 5 more years passed before news from the Yi dynasty reached us again. Shen Huaizhi had installed the eldest imperial prince as crown prince. Then, one late night, he slipped away from the palace unnoticed and went to the 3 Purities temple. He shaved his head and took monastic vows, intending to become a monk, though no one knew why. Some said his inclination toward Buddhism began when the Empress Dowager recovered from her illness years ago, others claimed he couldn't let go of the late Empress Yuanjing, still others whispered he was gravely ill, his days numbered. Some overactive imagination even suggested that my ghost, my long-dead first wife, haunted his dreams night after night, tormenting him with guilt. Empress Dowager Zhuang pleaded with him to reconsider, even threatening to take her own life, but to no avail. In the end, she only saw a young monk clad in a kasaya. Shen Huaizhi soon passed away from illness. The 9-year-old crown prince ascended the throne, with the Empress Dowager ruling as Grand Empress Dowager. For a time, the people of the Yi dynasty lived in peace and prosperity. Trade with many nations flourished, naturally benefiting the people of Danchuan as well. Only now do I realize, locked within a golden cage, one cannot match the freedom of birds singing in the woods. Yecheng Palace was lavish, but it was a golden cage. Shen Huaizhi, you were merely the prologue to my life. Now, as I touch these gleaming gold bars,